Okay, Mike, without further ado, you're on.
Right. Thank you, everybody, very much. So my name is Mike DePalma. I'm the Senior Channel Development Manager for DATTO. So we are a backup disaster recovery and business continuity provider based out of Norwalk, Connecticut, so about 40 miles east of Manhattan. A pretty cool story, briefly, about the company itself. It was founded 13 years ago by a 22-year-old named Austin McCord. Started building these devices by hand in his basement. You fast forward to about 2 weeks ago, and we just had our IPO. We just went public. So you can follow us at MSP. It's pretty exciting stuff, but it's really one of those basement to billions type stories. So we have over 1,800 employees around the world, 23 offices, and we have 9 data centers that protect over 560 petabytes of data. It's one of the largest private clouds in the world. So we don't use Azure or AWS. It's all data centers that we run. We've got 2 here in the States, one in Reading, Pennsylvania, and one out in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I'll get to the importance of those in a little bit, but that's just kind of briefly who we are and what we do. But I always like to set the stage and kind of see where we are historically. I'm a history nerd. Back in my traveling days before the pandemic hit, I was out on the road 3-4 days a week, so I was reading books on the plane, and my wife would make fun of me, but you know, it's kind of my hobby. So I like to kind of put things in perspective. And if you look at the history of the human race, we've had these different eras, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Renaissance. And what makes all of these things in common is that they all had some sort of technological advancement that advanced the human race. Now, the problem is in every one of those eras, there were bad actors on the other side exploiting those same technologies. Now, you fast forward 1,000 years from now, people are going to look back at this era and say, clearly, this is the information age. This is the data age. Probably starting somewhere in the 70s until today. And thank goodness we are in this age. As we've had these crazy last 8-9 months, it has allowed the most businesses to continue to stay productive. Great, right? But the problem is, again, like every other piece of history, there's bad actors on the other side exploiting these same technologies. And we're seeing those exploitations increase as we're kind of in this work from anywhere environment. Now, you could look at disaster response regardless of what happens, and there's phases that we all go through, the business community goes through, whether it's the hurricane season that clearly is never ending down in the southeast, the fires out west, tornadoes, or something like COVID-19. Crisis emerges, right? COVID-19 came on very, very quickly in terms of what the business community had to deal with. So the second phase was, okay, let's make sure everybody's safe, right? Let's make sure that everybody can stay safe. The third phase is really where technology came into play. Now everybody's working from wherever they're working from, their living room, their home office, maybe they were working from the office. How do we do this? How do we stay productive? And that's really where your technology came into play. Were you able to provide the tools to everybody in your company to make sure that they can accomplish the job that they're expected to do? Now we're probably somewhere between phase 4 and phase 5. We're seeing, you go back to the office in phases, these type of things. My kids are working remote one week or learning remote and learning from school. So we're somewhere in between there. We're bouncing back and forth. But eventually we're all striving to get to whatever that phase 6 looks like. And we don't know, nobody has a silver bullet, but the key for all phases 4, 5, and 6, and even phase 3 to some extent, was the ability to be agile. It's the agility of your technology to be able to say, it doesn't matter where my folks are physically sitting, I'm going to make sure that they have the tools that they need to stay productive. And that's really critical. And again, luckily we're in an environment right now where there are some great tools out there, and there continue to be new releases to make sure that that can happen. Now, when we talk about cyber crimes and specifically ransomware, I've been giving presentations on this for the last 5 years. I'm not on the sales team. My job is literally just to go around and do seminars and presentations like this and industry events. And 5 years ago, I'd get a couple head nods when I'm talking about ransomware, but the feeling in the room, because most of these folks are in the small to mid-sized business community, is, hey, this is stuff that's happening at the enterprise level. I'm not a Fortune 500 company. Who's going to waste time attacking me? Now, as the years went on, we saw a lot more head nods, a lot more people picking up their phones and taking pictures of certain slides. And I wanted to do a little experiment. So one of the things I do is I go out and I do industry events, talking to managed service providers like MVP. And there's this one particular event circuit. They have 6 events throughout the year, 6 different cities. So a couple of years ago, I did an experiment. Now, these were all IT providers, right? The best of the best. But in every one of these cities, what I would do is I would hire a model. This model would just wear a golf shirt that said Inverse Technologies on it. And what she would do is during the break, before my presentation, there's always those coffee breaks and people are milling around the vendor floor. She would walk around with a bowl full of USB sticks that said Inverse Technologies. They were cool looking USB sticks. They looked like a credit card. You folded it open. It's great. Every single one of those events, 6 for 6, every city, that bowl was empty by the time I went up on stage. And so I would get up there and I'm telling, this is more of a deep dive into the technology and those things. And I say, you know what? I had a great video I want to show you that my marketing team just sent me this morning. Now I had to submit this deck a week ago, but I threw it on this USB stick and I call a colleague up to the stage and hand them the USB stick. They go run in the back where the AV folks are. And I'd say, wait till you see this video, right? We do these really cool disaster demos where we take a server and we blow it up or we smash it, we light it on fire, and then we show the virtualization capabilities. And the crowd's kind of looking like, oh, this is kind of a weird presentation, but you know, I'll go with it. Yeah, there it is right there, the Inverse Technologies folder and the disaster demo video. And when that button clicks, boom, scary red screen pops up. And everybody in the room knows I just infected myself with ransomware. And so I'm scrambling, I'm yelling at my colleague, I'm looking at the audience. I say, I took this USB stick from that woman that was out in the lobby. And I see you did too. All the USB sticks are on the tables in front of you. And she's long gone now. And how do I know that? Well, because I hired her. And he didn't even plug anything in the back. This is just a video embedded into my presentation. And just think if this was a real criminal act here, and there's 200 or so people in the room, I get half of you folks to plug this in, and I only ask you for $1,000. I could make $100,000 in 15 minutes, very little effort or cost on my end, and you would never suspect it was me. And these things are real. These are really ways that these criminals are getting through. The American Dental Association a couple years back sent out a welcome package to all their members, and within it there was a USB stick they had outsourced to China. It had malware embedded into it, and they were actually infecting their own members. So these things are real, and I point this out to show the sophistication of how these attacks are occurring and how the vast majority of these attacks come through some sort of user error, not typically maliciously done by an insider, but somebody that just didn't know what they weren't supposed to do. They weren't properly trained. And that's why you see these statistics continue to rise. I mean, they're staggering statistics. And still, a vast majority of them come through something simple like a phishing attack. Now, those have evolved as well, but this is what we're looking at. A business is hit with ransomware every 13 seconds. So I get the question all the time as I'm out talking to businesses, what are the chances I get hit? You couldn't ask me an easier question. The answer is 100%. You're being attacked right now. It's a matter of whether your protection is keeping these attacks from getting through, and if they get through, if somebody's clicking on that email, and if that happens, whether you have some sort of solution in place to make sure you're not paying that ransom. But you are being attacked. And we're seeing the government actually really stepping up their efforts to educate the folks out there. They were coming at the healthcare industry very specifically over the last couple of months. Again, these guys are very, very opportunistic. Healthcare system is starting to get overwhelmed right now. They know that they're very vulnerable. They know that, hey, these systems cannot be down for several days, so these hospitals are going to pay. And so it's really scary stuff. And the Department of the Treasury put out a statement, this was probably just 2 weeks ago, talking specifically about ransomware. And within that, they say you're actually now at risk of violating regulations by paying that. And the reason is simple. And I've presented alongside folks from the FBI and Department of Homeland Security and all the rest, and they will tell you not to pay. And one of the reasons they say you're not allowed to pay is because oftentimes the folks that are behind these attacks are actually enemy states. They're actually terrorist organizations. They'll tell you flat out, we could put all of the security measures in place and sanctions and all the rest, but they're going to find ways to make their money. So if you pay this, you actually are at risk of violating federal law by helping to fund a terrorist organization. So they're going to start making it essentially illegal to pay these payments. And so when you look at who we're up against, they're all scary folks. These are not the guy in their basement anymore doing these attacks just so they don't have to get a real job, or they can brag to their friends on social media or all the rest. This is truly a corporate structure. There are ransomware developers that go develop the ransomware. They then sell it off to what I call the sales team that actually do the attacks. There are places in this world where people go to the office, they punch in their time card, they sit there and spend 8 hours doing all of these attacks, they punch out, they go home and they have dinner with their families. It is truly a corporate structure. So there's very layered approach to doing this. We do see insider threats still, more so at the enterprise level, but we're seeing an uptick in that, mostly because we've seen a bunch of layoffs, people are angry, They might want to, be spiteful on their way out. We're seeing organized crime. You think of organized crime, you think of the Scorsese movies and all these type of things. They have shifted now to the cyberspace because there's so much money to be made with so little risk of being caught. So we're seeing organized crime here, Europe, Asia, all around the world, shifting to these type of crimes. I mentioned the foreign nation states. A lot of times there's two goals with these attacks. There's one, obviously, to make money. There's also the other side, which is just to disrupt our economy, create distrust between businesses. And so again, they're attacking businesses of all sizes. And we still see the Internet of Things hackers, and that is increasing as well. If you want to Google a pretty interesting story, the greatest casino heist ever pulled happened a couple of years ago. And it wasn't, again, like the movies where they're sneaking through the elevator shafts. What these criminals were able to do was infiltrate the casino's network through the internet-connected fish tank thermometer. There was a vulnerability there. They exploited it. They got in, and what they did was they extracted all the personal and financial information for all the high rollers that gambled at that casino. Information that's worth tens of millions of dollars on the dark web. And so this is what we're up against. And so that false sense of security of, hey, we can combat these guys, or who's going to attack me, is truly why we're seeing such rampant attacks throughout the world. And about $1 billion is estimated to actually have changed hands last year between the business community and the criminals, just with ransomware alone. The actual impact is estimated by the government is closer to $75 billion. So what makes up this cost? Well, this cost includes the cost of downtime, the cost of data loss, the cost of businesses that never are able to recover and have to close their doors. FEMA put out a study last year that said that 60% of small businesses that were down for a week or more, this was due to natural disasters, never reopened their doors. Now, downtime, it doesn't matter what causes the downtime, but that's the reality. And so what we have to look at is the two pieces of leverage that these criminals have. And I could sit here and acronym you to death if you want to hear me do it technology-wise, but the two that are critical, and I really want you to take away from this webinar, are your RPO and your RTO. Now, your RPO is the simpler question to answer. And that's your recovery point objective. How much data are you at risk of losing at any given time? Simply put, how often are you taking those backups? Are they hourly? Okay, then you're saying I could absorb losing an hour's worth of data. Some folks are doing it daily. Everybody's going to have a different RPO goal, but it's very important to take a look at that and see what you have in place and say, is that RPO goal aggressive enough to what we really need? Okay, but the criminals know if that was the one piece of leverage, they wouldn't make a ton of money, right? Because they're encrypting your data. If you're not backing up your data, of course you're going to pay, but they know most businesses are backing up their data in some form or fashion. So they know if that was their one piece of leverage, they wouldn't get a ton of payments. The reason why people pay is that right-hand side of the screen. This is the important question to answer, your recovery time objective. How long would it take you to get all of that data back into a true production environment and get your business back up and running? And is that aggressive enough? And how much would that cost you? The vast majority of business owners that I talk to can't answer that question. They've never done a full-blown disaster test. They say, okay, I've got great backups. I'm backing it off-site. That's great, somewhere in the cloud. Perfect. You ever tried to pull several terabytes of data down from the cloud? How long is that going to take? You have to put a new piece of hardware in place, update your operating systems, your applications. You need to be able to answer this question and put a dollar value behind it to see if this is now aggressive enough, because this is the reason why people pay. The criminals want to put you in a situation where you've got to do some math. I could either pay you $10,000 to get my data back, or I can go restore my data. And the criminals are going to say, okay, you're probably using some form of commoditized backup solution. Come call me in 3 days, 4 days, a week or more to get that data back. And then I'm gonna, by the way, charge you more money because you waited so long. I did a webinar a couple weeks ago with a gentleman from the Department of Homeland Security. Now, they're very strict on sharing their slides. You can't take pictures of their slides, but he said this publicly, so anybody on the webinar would know this. But he said that they estimate that the average downtime from a ransomware attack was 16.2 days, which is staggering. So now you start to look at 16.2 days of downtime. What is that going to cost you? And then you go back to that $75 billion number, and that's where that cost really comes into play. And I like to tell the story of the city of Atlanta only because we have these hard numbers. It's not just anecdotally me making estimates. The city of Atlanta got hit with ransomware about 2 years ago. They were asked for $52,000. Not enough to shut down the city of Atlanta, but again, the government says you're not supposed to pay. The city of Atlanta said, okay, we've got a huge IT team. a huge IT budget, we can get all this data back. Now, all of their systems are down, criminal database, everything. So they have to try to restore all these systems. Within 3 weeks, an article came out that was confirmed by the city. They'd already spent $2.7 million trying to remediate this problem. And 3 weeks later, they still did not have all those systems back up online. All right, so now you're starting to see where that 75 billion comes from. Now, they went back to the city come budget time and said, we actually need another $9.5 million to not only completely remediate this issue, but to put upgrades in place to make sure that we can recover faster down the road. So their actual cost from this attack was $12 million. Now, it's hard to scale if you're a small business, but the math is right there. And I can tell you that right on their website, they show that their total annual IT budget is $35 million. So that's a third of their budget went towards remediating this problem. You look at the city of Baltimore, you look at the city of New Orleans, they've all been attacked. Up here in Connecticut, the public school system in Hartford was attacked 2 days before the first day of school. And they had to send out an alert at 5:30 in the morning to parents saying, hey, we can't open today because our systems aren't up. And they were parents all over the city dropping their kids off at bus stops, going to school, finding out that the doors are locked because they weren't able to get that alert. So really scary stuff. And we do a ransom report every year. Actually, we have a new one coming out next week. And if you want it, you could send an email to me and I can get it to you or the folks at MVP. But the one last year we did, and we've done it year after year, we see pretty similar statistics. First and foremost, we know every single industry is vulnerable. And the reason for that is the way ransomware works. They're, for the most part, not stealing your data. They're just encrypting it and saying, hey, pay me some money, and I'll give you the encryption key. So that means they don't care what your data is. Your data might not be valuable to anybody on the dark web, but they know you can't operate without it, so you'll pay, and that's why we're seeing every single industry attacked. So again, don't fall into that false sense of security. We interview both MSPs, managed service providers like MVP, and the small business community. When we ask them about ransomware specifically, 98% of those managed service providers agree that this is truly an epidemic and really something that needs to be addressed. The business owner side was less than 4 in 10. Which probably means guys like me that go out and try to do these educational webinars aren't doing a great job because it's staggering. They're being attacked every 13 seconds, but a lot of business owners don't think it'll ever happen to them. And the other problem is, especially in the small to mid-sized business community, less than 1 in 4 of these are being reported to authorities. There's 2 reasons for that. One, the FBI doesn't have the resources to go in and put any resources into finding a $10,000 ransomware attack. They want you to report it, to try to look at trends and see what typical vulnerabilities are being exploited, but they don't have the resources to do it. But the bigger reason why people don't pay is because they don't want it getting out that they were hit. They don't want that hit to their reputation. They don't want to be known as the business in their region or in their industry that's been attacked. It's just really a hit to their reputation, so they try to handle it in-house or they pay the ransom to get it over with. Let's just get back up and running. I don't want my clients or my prospects to know about it. And so it's scary stuff. And within that report, we saw, again, average payment to the small business community is only $4,300, not typically enough to break the bank. Cost of downtime, 10 times higher. Forbes put out a study in January of this year. They estimated that cost of downtime to the small business community was $84,000. $84,000 was the average loss to that business. That had doubled from the year before. Again, we run our report from July 1 to June 30th. So we're getting numbers that are about 6 months behind them. I assume when I see these numbers, they're going to be very much in line because last year's numbers lined right up. We had 46,000, they had 41. So this is the impact that's being, we're seeing out in space. And so we got to talk about downtime. This is the reason why businesses are closing their doors. This is the reason why they're paying the ransom payments. And so how do you combat that? Now, luckily, you've seen technology evolve very rapidly. And I'm sure you're using technologies within your business that didn't even exist 2 years ago. Backup has evolved drastically as well, but a lot of businesses are still stuck in the traditional forms of backup, network storage, or maybe just that cloud storage. Business continuity really looks at backup in a much different way. First and foremost, it's critical that you have georedundancy with those backups. I mentioned our data centers in particular. You'd have an on-premise backup, but it would automatically replicate to those 2 data centers. Now, the reason we chose those locations is very simple. It's because they're on the opposite sides of the country. Maybe there is some natural disaster. Maybe Hurricane Sandy comes back up to the Northeast and wipes out a lot of server rooms. Well, you've got a second copy of your data in Pennsylvania. Let's go doomsday scenario. What happens in wherever you're located is impacting our data center there. Well, now we've got a third copy of your data on the other side of the country. So multiple copies of your data in different geographical locations is critical, right? all of those things happening automatically, the on-premise as well as that offsite sync. I talk about automation. 91% of data loss and downtime occurs because of user error. Again, not malicious, mostly somebody clicking on an email they don't know about. So what you would do is you'd sit down with the folks from MVP and you'd say, okay, let's talk about my RPO. I need to back up hourly during business hours. That's aggressive enough for me. I'm good to go. So those backups are now all going to occur automatically. There's not somebody just manually doing these backups, but more importantly, they're being tested automatically, every single one of them, both locally and to make sure that offsite sync occurred. Again, conversations I have all the time. You can answer the question of how often you're taking backups, but when I ask, all right, how often are you testing those backups? Who's responsible for those backups? Who's keeping those logs? A lot of times that question can't be answered. So you look at that RPO goal of hourly, and then you find out when you're hit with ransomware that your backups have failed for 3 weeks. Well, now that star on the left-hand side of the screen that we saw before jumps from 1 hour to 3 weeks. So the testing is critical. And maybe you don't see all pretty green dots. Maybe there's an X and a backup failed. Well, now you could be proactive and take a look at whether that backup actually did fail and figure out what's going on instead of finding out after an attack occurred. The way that the backups occur is vastly different as well. It's not just backing up at the file and folder level like traditional backups. It actually takes a full image, a full snapshot of that entire server. So now you're capturing everything, the operating systems, the applications, everything that lives on that device is replicated to the on-premise device and then ultimately sent off to those data centers. Now, once you get that big base image of whatever it is, 1 terabyte, 10 terabytes, 100 terabytes, that data is now seeded into the cloud through a round trip drive. So you're not waiting for all that data to get up there. And then you set that schedule, and all the backups are doing are looking at block level incremental changes. And so what this allows us the ability to do is A, you don't have huge data sets going up to the cloud, but B, it allows us to create what's called an inverse chain, which means that every single one of these backups are independent of one another. They're not layered upon previous backups. So if you're hit at 11 o'clock with ransomware, you can roll back to that last clean backup. And there's ransomware detection built in. And the reason why we can do ransomware detection is because we're just looking at these block level changes. So what's happening is every hour, essentially the same data changes are occurring. They're all running along smoothly. But when ransomware hits, it leaves a clear footprint. Everything all of a sudden is now encrypted, and it's going to send off a red flag. So we're not looking for individual variants because you'll never catch the criminals that way. There's about 3 million variants of ransomware alone out there. But they all basically do the same thing. They're encrypting your files. So you're gonna be able to identify, hey, this particular backup looks encrypted. It looks like there's some sort of ransomware on there. Let's identify the last clean backup and point that out, and then we'll figure out what's going on with that backup. And ultimately what this gives us the ability to do, and this is where you're combating downtime, is the virtualization capability. Since we have captured not only the files and the folders, but also the operating systems and the applications, if somebody in your office gets that scary red screen, and it now infiltrates any kind of server that they're tied into. Since everything that lived on that server lives on the on-premise device, it would literally be just a call to MVP, and they would spin up what's called a virtual machine. And this would now be operating as your server. So the idea, the mindset of, I got hit, my first step is to try to restore, is now changed. Your first step is not to try to restore that data. Your first step is to get your business back up and running. This is how you combat that. So get your business back up and running. This is a true production environment. Remember, all the business applications are there. So for the most part, if this is happening locally, folks in your office don't even know that this occurred. And you could be in this virtualized state for a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, because all of these backups are being backed up as well. So when you're ready to get back and you've done some forensics on that infected device, and you now got a new piece of hardware in place and installed all, everything, you now bring over what's called the bare metal restore, and you get everything back, including the business applications, including all the operating systems. And you could start that restoration process while you're still in this virtualized state. So now when you talk about downtime, we've closed the downtime on the front end because you're able to get up in a matter of minutes or hours instead of waiting days or weeks, or that 16.2 days that the Department of Homeland Security said. You're able to get up again in a very, very quick amount of time. You're also able to identify your RTO and your RPO. The RPO we already looked at. You set your schedule, you're gonna be testing those backups, and you make sure that those are aggressive enough. But the RTO can be tested as well. Every single night, these virtualization capabilities are tested. It's brought up in the background to a boot screen. Snapshot is taken with a timestamp and everything. So you know when you come into work the next morning that not only are the backups there, but the virtualization capabilities are there as well. And then you could do this either locally or from either one of the data centers. Again, if something does happen, there is a natural disaster and that on-premise device is compromised, you have the ability to do it from either one of those data centers as well. Now, ultimately, the way that we're doing business has changed. We're right now on a webinar where, last year at this time, maybe we'd be having lunch somewhere and it'd be a lunch and learn. The way that we're doing business, whether it's meetings, whether it's just collaboration, chatting, conferencing, data lives in so many different places right now. And so, we've seen an explosion in things like Microsoft Teams, obviously Zoom. There's kind of a race to the top with all of these things, and they're all great products. And again, thank goodness they exist. How would the economy have survived without it, right? But all of these systems are vulnerable as well. There's, again, the false sense of security of, hey, it's Microsoft. They're not going to get attacked. It's Microsoft. Anybody that's had Microsoft 365 over the last month knows there's already been 4 different instances of downtime. But also, we're seeing attacks on these systems, on these SaaS applications. We're seeing them mostly come through from somebody clicking on an email they're not supposed to. So basically, the entire community, including Microsoft themselves, will tell you to back up that data. I did a presentation in the Burlington, Massachusetts headquarters or East Coast headquarters for Microsoft, sat on stage next to one of their senior solutions engineers who mentioned that exact thing. They have what's called the shared responsibility model. So does G Suite. We are G Suite's shop as well. Which basically means they'll protect the security of their cloud itself, but the actual data that lives in that is the responsibility of the tenant, ultimately you. You go to their user agreement or you go to their forums and you talk about data retention and deletion. They'll be very frank about it. They're not liable for the deletion of that. A lot of times it could just be somebody deleting something they're not supposed to, or a former employee leaving and there being deletions or things in their trash box that are 30 days old, and now you're looking for those. G Suite, essentially the same exact thing. And so it's important to back up this data, because think about where all that data lives. Whether if you're using Office 365, the OneDrive, right, SharePoint, all of your contacts, all those places where critical data lives needs to be backed up. There is a virus out there called Ransomware Cloud, many variants of this. Again, I'm giving you a couple Google stories to go do, but go Google Kevin Mitnick. Very interesting story. He at one point was on the FBI's most wanted list for being a notorious cyber attacker. He got caught, went to jail for several years, came out, and if you like the movie Catch Me If You Can, it's a similar story. Now he works for the good guys. We hired him to come to our conference. He stood on stage in front of 2,500 managed service providers and showed a virus that he actually created. Again, not a theoretical virus. He created it. And he shut 2 laptops up. In a matter of minutes, he showed exactly what this attack would look like. Email comes in. This looks like a legitimate email from Microsoft, right? Got to update your anti-spam pro. It sounds legit, right? I'm working remote. I'm in my kitchen right now. All right, all I got to do is accept that. You click that accept button, and now every single email in your inbox has now been encrypted. And if you have admin access, every single email in that domain can be encrypted. And the only email you can open is the pretty red screen from Kevin that says, hey, pay me my money in Bitcoin. And oh, by the way, it's in Bitcoin, which 99.9% of these attacks are asking for Bitcoin, because it's not going to get traced back to me. I'm not asking for a credit card payment or an ACH payment. This is what we're looking at. So hopefully you understand now the importance of not only backing up your data, but looking at it in a different way, looking at it through the lens of business continuity, because this is really the way that you combat this. So I'm going to turn it back over to the folks over at MVP to just kind of close things up and maybe talk about some next steps.
Thanks a lot. Great information. And, I can't speak enough and say enough about having a strong backup disaster recovery and business continuity plan. This is a solution we've been using now for about 8 years. And I got to tell you, it's been a lifesaver, not only for us, but a lot of our partners. And we've had partners use it for a month or two until we had to repair the issues that happened. We had partners that had it and had ransomware. We were able to get them up and running with not paying a ransom right away. And in simpler terms, the way that it works is that you actually buy a device that comes and sits right next to your server and can back up that server, not the data, but the whole image of the server, as short as 10 minutes. So you're never behind. Backup usually, happens at night, and you come in the morning, and if you had an issue at 5 in the afternoon or at 4, you missed the whole day's work, and you have to go in and try to recreate it. Not anymore. This is not backup. This is business continuity. In other words, let's get back to work. Even though the server is still on fire, we still have an issue, but let me get you back to right before you had the issue and get you operational, and that while we fixed what the problem is. And DATTO has put together this deal up to 75% off new devices purchased by the end of the year. That's if you have a 3-year commitment, and 50% if you have a 1-year commitment, because there's a monthly fee associated with it that for using the DATTO data centers, where we're going to store everything remotely, just in case we have a fire or a major disaster in your location. At least you don't get hit with it. So we can DATTO can actually boot up your entire environment in their data center if your office is burnt down. Having a solution like this is key. Not only is it HIPAA compliant, and you should have it, but it also makes you sleep better at night. You're able to get what you need and be operational. It's encrypted and get you up and running without having a big restore. Think of it this way. If you have only 1 terabyte worth of data out on the cloud, it will take a lot longer to download that terabyte down, restore what you have, rebuild what you have, and then put all that stuff back on a server that's operational via a device like this, where we can boot up your environment right on the device itself. So if you're looking for a disaster recovery solution and you've joined this webinar, and we have 44 people on, having 75% of a device, especially if you're looking at terabytes devices that cost thousands of dollars, is huge. It's a great deal, and one that many should take advantage of. Think of it as an insurance policy, and think of it as an updated, upgraded backup solution, something that gives you business continuity, something that gives you a disaster recovery. It comes also with a disaster recovery plan that you could put into your policies and procedures, so you know exactly what to do when there is an issue. And obviously, as your managed service provider, MVP manages the whole thing. We actually log in remotely. We make sure that the backup is happening, that there is no errors. And I know the backup has its own self monitoring, and it lets us know when there is a problem, but we do that as well. And we also will do some restores and some, it depends on the level that you're on, but we'll do some restores and we'll do some dry runs to see what happens when a server does go down. And we'll do that after hours, and we work with you to make sure that you're aware of what happens if you have an issue. That's what it's all about here. It's about having your data, because at the end of the day, your network can be down, but if you have your data and you have it secure and we can get you up and running, it's about minimizing that RTO, that minimizing the time for you to bring you back up and running. So please take advantage of this opportunity. 75% off devices. I've never heard of that. I was so excited when I saw it come through. We've asked for a strong push for this webinar, as we always do, and DATTO came through really strong. You know, if you're looking at a device that costs you, you know, $8,000-$10,000, I mean, that's a huge difference. You know, you end up spending $2,500 on the device, not $10,000. So take advantage of that. Some of you already have this solution that have joined this webinar, so we appreciate you joining again to get to hear about it yet again. But you do have, some of you have it, and some of you may have it and have a smaller device, and your business has increased and may look for a larger device. And what DATTO does in this case is that they actually will take back the old device. You pay a $100 restocking fee, but they take back the whole device and credit you what you paid for originally. And then on the other side, what ends up happening is you then pay the difference between the smaller device and the larger device. Your PSM, your partner success manager, will be more than glad to discuss this with you, let you know where you stand, and if you're ready to make the leap from backup to disaster recovery, not have to worry about your data ever again, please contact us. And if you think your backup is all set and you're taken care of and you feel comfortable and confident when it comes to that, because we have some people that are not clients on here, well, test it. Make sure it is where you think it is, because you'd be surprised sometimes when you come to test something. I prefer testing it before there is an emergency and testing it after there's an emergency. So DATTO is a unique proprietary system that works flawlessly. We've been with them for a long time and we've seen their power. They're now a public company, publicly traded. I highly recommend buying that stock if you dabble, and because it's a up and coming company that does quite a bit when it comes to backup and disaster recovery. There is other pieces to DATTO as well now. They do switches and access points or what have you, but their core, where they started, is this product right here, and that's the strongest product we've seen. We've seen competition across the board, but nothing performs as seamlessly as DATTO does, and we highly recommend it. So I have a couple of questions here, and I think I answered some of them. So I did answer if you already have it, but you need a larger one, can I get 75% off? If you do sign up with that, with a 3-year, yes, you can, and you'll get that discount as well, and we'll take yours back. Another question here comes with policies and procedure. Yes, I think I mentioned that. Yes, policies and procedure will help you dictate that. We'll sit with you and go through how your backup is working, how it will be configured when we come to install that device, and we'll document all that for you to have. How about SQL? Okay, so if you do have a SQL database, that's another question. So the question says, what about databases in SQL? Well, not only can you back up your database and it takes a snapshot of it and we're able to restore because we're restoring the whole thing, but we can also restore specific fields within database, specific sections within it, specific tables. We have a lot more control with DATTO than we do with other solutions. So yes, we can just restore one file. We can restore parts of a database. We can restore a one Word document somewhere. It's still a backup solution that works like a backup solution. But the beauty of it is it's also a business continuity solution. So it takes a whole image of your environment and we can boot it up that way. Now this is DATTO, and I gotta add that a lot more people are talking about Office 365 and Google Docs. Well, like Mike said, they don't guarantee their backup. They don't guarantee their data. Your data is your responsibility. Just because you have it in Google or you have it in Office 365, that doesn't mean you're backed up. Now, yes, they're redundant, but if you look at their SLA strictly dictates that your data is your responsibility. And that's why DATTO released the SaaS backup solution, which is basically a backup solution for your cloud environment. It will back up Office 365 and SharePoint and all the data that you store there and your emails and what have you, and then push that to the DATTO data center. We can also go in and restore specific emails and look for specific things that if you're using that. So be attentive of that. And if you have Office 365 or you're using Google and you're not backing it up, please contact your PSM when it comes to that. So does DATTO SaaS have any deals? Well, there's very aggressive. There is no deals right now, unless Mike, is there a deal for DATTO SaaS that for this webinar, or?
I don't know. I'm being not in sales. I mean, I could check on that to see if there's anything specific for the end of the year. But we can get back to you on that.
Okay, because that's another question that came through. So we'll take a look at the SaaS side and see what we could do from a deal perspective. But it's aggressive anyway, aggressively priced, and it's key. I mean, obviously we use it, and most of our clients that are Office 365 have that as well. We make it a mandate because at the end of the day, we just can't lose data, and data is the most important piece. That's how you run your business. It's your data. Your data makes you specific and makes you unique. It's not just you know, your applications and your operating systems and your systems themselves. It's the data that's in it that makes you unique, right? Everybody uses Windows, but how you use it and what you store in it that makes you who you are as a company. And you do get it is HIPAA compliant, so you'll be able to, if you're a healthcare organization, definitely use that, depending on which EMR you're using or where it's at or what have you. So these are the, oh, hold on, one more question came through, so bear with me. So I want to just make sure I ask Mike this, and Mike, if you can come back with an answer here. Our existing partners that are doing upgrades and they're going to sign up for another 3-year agreement, will they also get the 75% off?
I would have to check with Greg. Normally, no, because I mean, the cost isn't huge. And remember, you're not purchasing a huge new device. You're going to get a full credit back on what that previous device was. So you're really only paying the delta. I can check on that, but it does reset new 5-year warranty on that device for the larger ones. The small ones are 3 years. But it will reset those things. But it's a great question. I could check on that. But normally, you're not talking about another $10,000 investment. It's just the delta between those two costs.
Right. Agreed. All right. So we'll find out about that. We'll see what we could do and get you the best possible deals. That's the whole idea of the webinars. Our webinar series are really made to not only show you what the technology out there is, keep you abreast of what else is happening from a technology perspective and what other solutions are out there, and most importantly, try to get you the best possible deals on those technologies, because at the end of the day, we want you operational, we want you available, we want you capable, and we want to make sure that you're able to go back to life as it was prior to a disaster. Now we're in the middle of a pandemic. Nothing stands true, and making sure you have your stuff backed up properly and have a business continuity plan in place just in case something happens, and to test it regularly to make sure that you're operational. Because if you're not at the office and everybody's still working remotely, or the second wave is now coming and you have to run to home, having a flexible network is key. And Mike had said that being able to work from anywhere at any time, the same way you're working at the office, is very important to make sure that we make your network work that way. And this solution is one of the many that you should have. Obviously, security solutions is another big piece of it, but that to me is the ultimate security solution, because after you get hit, this is the solution that will get you back whole and make you operational. So let me see if I have any other questions. And that was the last question. Well, we're finishing early, a little bit early. Thank you for sharing your lunch with us. At the end of the day, I know it's lunch. I know everybody's busy, and it's a Thursday, and everybody usually has a lot to do. Thank you for taking the time, whether you're eating at your desk, or you're working while you're listening to us, or just completely focused on us, because I think Mike did a great job presenting what this solution is all about. And give us a call. Let's see what we could do, and let's take a look at your solution now. Let us help you test it, and let's make sure that you're getting the backup solution, disaster recovery that you need. And hopefully everybody will sleep better at night. Since we're wrapping up, I see some people starting to drop off, but we'll stay on for any additional questions. I'll unmute everybody now and open it up for everybody if anybody has any questions. Please feel free to let us know. And if you want to see a demo of this solution, also contact your PSM, and they'll or call us directly. And here's the number on the screen as you see it. This is Jamie's number, and she'll be able to help as well. And then we can actually call you and evaluate what you have. The most important piece here is sizing the right device, how much data you have, and what the size of the device needs to be. The size of the device is always bigger than the data, because we need retention space and what have you, usually double the amount of data that you have. So if you have 500 gigs of worth of data, you need a 1 terabyte device. If you have 2 terabytes worth of data, you need a 4 terabyte device. And so we'll help you size that device properly, and then we'll do a demo with you to show you what it could do and how it could do it. So give us a call and contact us. Oh, one more question came in. Is there an Amazon gift certificate giveaway? I saw that when I was signing up. There is, and this is from MVP. So there is going to be a giveaway out of the 43 people that joined us. We will be doing a drawing, and then we'll let everybody know who won the gift certificate. So we'll make sure of that. That's the questions from George. Thank you, George. Let me see if there's any other questions. Yep, that was it. Okay, bear with me. Can MVP test my current backup if not through MVP? If it's not through MVP, We can definitely help you with that, depending on who's managing it, if we have rights to it, but we can definitely take a look at it. And yes, we can test it by going in and trying to restore it. If you're not doing a backup through us, so that means you're probably not a client, please give Jamie a call and we'll schedule that separately than calling a PSM, because obviously you don't have a PSM with us yet. Let me see what else I have. Okay. So we do have two CI, this question came from Ben. Do you have a CISSP on staff to evaluate proper standards of what we need to be compliant? And yes, we do have two CISSP. CISSP stands for everybody else, a certified cybersecurity professional. So we do have two certified professionals on staff, and that will help you with the standards and will help you with the policies and procedures and make sure that you're compliant. To answer that for Ben.
Yeah, to add to that, I mean, there's a whole nother presentation I've done about regulations. Not that I'm a regulatory expert, but essentially what these regulations do, you know, they vary state by state, industry to industry, but they just shift the burden over to the business. They don't really help catch any of these guys. They don't help stop them. They're just saying, hey, you better, I'm going to come knocking on your door. You better show me your disaster recovery plan. So somebody was talking about policies and procedures. In just about every one of these regulations, those are required to be able to show, hey, here's the plan we have in place. So at a bare minimum, you need to have that in place. And then from there, the second step is definitely getting some testing done on what you have, trying to answer those RPO and RTO questions, and then make sure that it fits into what you have.
Exactly. Thank you, Mike. And that's exactly what we would help you with. And yeah, I mean, the solution is very compliant with just about every regulation we've seen out there, if not all of them. We haven't seen one that's not compliant with, but we will help you with that as part of the delivery of this solution. Okay. Well, we got like 10 minutes left, but there is no other questions, so we can wrap up early, or we'll stay on to see if anybody has any questions for us. But thank you for your time, everybody. Stay safe out there. Hopefully the second wave doesn't hit us as hard up here in Western New York. And make sure your data is backed up, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing for any business, is your data. And we don't want it out there on the dark web being sold, because your clients, like you're our clients, and you rely on us to make sure we get you the right solution to make sure that you're backed up. Your clients also rely on you to make sure that you're secure, so that their data that they've given you is as secure as possible. And that's what we're here to do with you and for you. So give us a call at any time, and we're here to help. Appreciate everybody's time. Everybody, please have a great day and a great weekend. Hopefully the weather comes back to what it was last week, even though it's very sunny today. A little chilly for my taste, but a very sunny and a beautiful day. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you for your help. All right, have a great day, everybody. We'll end the webinar.